I'm here with Eugene from our sharing team here on OneDrive Engineering. You are very much my go-to guy when it comes to anything around sharing. You have been leading a lot of our engineering stuff around that and had a great week with a session today where we took some of the stuff we talked about on Tuesday and really went deep dive. Talk a little bit about the session you had today, Eugene.
So today I talked about external sharing in OneDrive and SharePoint. We went through how OneDrive makes it easy to share content outside of your organization, whether you want to use a shareable link or whether you want to do something securely so that the recipient can't send to somebody else. I also talked a little bit about Office 365 groups and how they make it easy to work with people outside of your organization as part of a team. Overall, we're really excited to bring all of this new capability to OneDrive and SharePoint. We know external sharing has been a pain point for people, and it's been really great seeing the responses and getting feedback from people.
Let's take a second and talk about that. That was an area where a year or two ago we were pretty weak when it came to sharing. We were great when you were inside your company and wanted to share with other people within that, but when it came to external collaboration, we were a little weak. And then 2016 really amped up that functionality. So this year, we've really worked to land that we really kind of have 6 different levels of collaboration that we have, from anonymous to secure anonymous to inside your organization with people you know. Let's start with kind of the most permissive and kind of go down, because one of the things I say to people is, unlike some of our competing products where we really sort of let the end user pick what they want. For us, we allow IT to create sort of a sphere of control, and then for users to work within that based on the permission structure that they want to limit a user to. So walk us through that.
All right, so you made a really good point that there are different options for sharing content inside and outside of your organization.
Right.
And what we hear from IT admins is that they're really worried about people accidentally leaking data. I mean, there are malicious cases we have to worry about too, but often it's an accident. I reply to an email and I happen to have a thread in it, I happen to have a link in it that other people could use.
And this goes beyond DLP and DRM and Windows Microsoft information protection. We're talking just somebody hitting the wrong file and sharing things.
This is super simple stuff. Something like I'm like, hey,
and I wanted to clarify that.
If I'm like, hey, Steven, by the way, here's my final deck, and then you reply to someone and you're like, hey, this mail looks a little weird, is this the right icon? And then that person's like, interesting, here's a link to a secret deck that Eugene sent. And so what we focused on is enabling IT admins and site owners to configure not only restrictions, but defaults, so that users aren't likely to make mistakes when they're not really thinking about it and they're just like, I want to get my work done. And then users feel comfortable when they have choices, when they know that all of the choices are okay. All of the choices are within policy.
So let's start with the most restrictive, and let's go to least restrictive. Let's actually walk through those levels and what that enables and what that does.
Okay, well, I mean, in terms of most restrictive, the model in general for OneDrive is that everything's private by default. And so
it's a very important part.
Everything on OneDrive is completely
my files,
private.
our files, and that kind of concept.
Right, and so most restrictive is, I'm the only one who has access to anything.
Right,
and
that's the default. When you save something to OneDrive, that's what you get.
And the oldest model for sharing is that anytime I want anyone to access something, I have to add them explicitly as one person who has access to this item.
Right.
And that worked really well when it was only one person, and it worked terribly when someone would just get the link and then try to add someone else to the flow and then say, oh no, every time you add someone to the thread, you've got to go back into OneDrive, go back into SharePoint, add someone else. Right. And so that flow doesn't work well in a lot of modern workflows.
Right.
And it was a terrible default.
Yes.
Imagine if every email you sent by default was IRM lockdown, so you couldn't add people to the thread, you couldn't respond, it would really
Makes it very difficult to work as a team.
Yes. So that's the most restrictive. We've provided mechanisms in SharePoint so that SharePoint team sites allow you to work with a set of people, with a team. It made it really easy for people inside a team to work together, and as long as you could add someone to the team, then they could keep working, they could get to all of their stuff. But again, sometimes you'd have like one document that you want to review with, for example here, we want to have our, a vendor go work on our slides and improve them. And so you have one document you want to send out, and then it's like adding the team feels very heavyweight and introduces risk, but otherwise we wanted something that wasn't too cumbersome. And so we allowed you to have controls on a team site to say that you can allow team members to share individual files and folders, or you cannot. And so you can totally lock down the site.
Checkbox you can simply check and be able to do,
And then a few years back, 2 years back or so, we added the notion of shareable links that work inside a company.
Right.
So I could get a link that could be forwarded to anyone inside the company and it would work, but anyone outside the company couldn't access it because they didn't have an account. That model works super well, and inside Microsoft, that's what we use as our default.
And you can get a link with a single click, don't have to do anything
more. It works
more.
super well. So then the challenge came with external sharing.
Yeah.
So now I mean, one model for external sharing that actually works super well, and it's actually what we hear customers say is they're like, man, I want to share something and they have to go create an account, so I just send an attachment. And if they're okay sending an attachment, what that means is they're like, yeah, it's fine if that person forwards it to someone else because we're working.
You're giving up all control to it, yeah.
And so we said, we think we have a better alternative. You can create a shareable link. The link will work for anyone who has the link, but they have to have the link. And because it's in the cloud, one is you know who has you know you have the ability to revoke the link at any point. And when you revoke the link, everyone loses access. You can't do that with an attachment. And second of all, when somebody creates that kind of link for your content, you as the owner get a notification to say, hey, heads up, someone took your Ignite deck and they made a link that can work outside the company. Did you mean for that to happen?
Right.
Together, those things made it really easy for people to share outside the company. Then we had people saying, well, there are times when I want to share something securely. I don't want them to pass it on to other people. What does that mean, securely? You know, that's actually a bad word to use. It's something that we say all the time internally as a way to differentiate. Right. Every link you share is secure in that the people who aren't meant to get it can't get to it. Right. Even a link that works for anyone who has it. But I want to add a
second level of security to ensure the person that I'm sending this deck to is the person who will open it and be the recipient of it and be the only person who can have it.
It's more like it's an extra restriction to say, I'm going to share this to Steven and I'm not going to let anyone else open it even if you try to give it to them.
Right.
And so for that level of security, the place where we had a lot of feedback and a lot of pain was around the notion that like, I just want to share one file with you or one folder and you've got to go create an account. And it feels like this heavyweight process. It's like when you go online and you're like, I just want to buy some deodorant and this store is making me create an account and sign up with my credit card. And
right, you got to have, in order to get the discount on the 12 cans of pumpkin, you got to have the little thing. Yeah, I don't want that, just give it to me.
We've introduced a model that says, of course, if you're working in a group and you're going to be coming back and they're a team member, they can create a guest account, everything works. But if I just want to share a file or folder in a secure way, I can send you the file, I can specify your email address, and then OneDrive will make sure that you own that email address without making you go through all of the work of creating an account. And
no need for a Microsoft Service account. You can just go in, open it, you'll get that, then link that comes to you, you type in the code and you're good. Now, what's the limit on that? Is it unlimited? Is there a time when they have to go back and re-authenticate to prove who they are?
Great question. So there are two time limits we talk about here. So one is when I try to open up content that is a secured link, secured to say Eugene at Microsoft, I'll get an email sent to Eugene at Microsoft because I'm the one who's supposed to get it, and that code's good for 15 minutes. The intention of that timeout is that if I'm going to take that mail and forward it on to other people, we don't want it to last a long time. We don't want that code to be a long-lived thing. And then the second timeout is, once I've entered the code to prove that I'm me, within that browser session, I'm me as long as the browser session's open. So that if I click on the link again, I don't have to re-enter my code. And I can check a box that says, remember me, so that even if I close the browser, I can come back.
But the question then that begs is, then can an admin say, that's great, but again, sphere of control, every 30 days, I want you to go back. So if you've changed addresses, if you're no longer with that company, we know it, and we're limiting that.
Oh yes, we've worked with enough admins to know that we always have to have a flexible time frame. We allow admins to specify how many days is that good for before the user has to go re-enter a code again, and it's up to the admin to decide how do they balance usability with this extra layer of security. We're really happy and we're proud that OneDrive is the only enterprise file sync and share solution that allows you to share in this secure way without making the recipient create an account.
And for anonymous sharing, which is that without that second level of authentication, there's also you can set a date range, but IT admins, that's just generic across their org, say, every 90 days, if you haven't opened it, you're going to have to re-ask permission for it.
So what we do is for
7 days or whatever it is that they do.
Links that are for these links that are designed for a specific person, they have to go prove they own the email address. For links that work for anybody, that is links that you can forward to anyone, IT can mandate an expiration date to say any link you send outside the company that's freely forwardable stops working for everyone after N days, just so that IT doesn't have to worry about someone forgetting that there's a link out there. Typically when you send a link to someone, they open the content, they get to it, and they're done. We just don't want a link lingering for months and months when it's not being used anymore.
No, absolutely. So then as we look at that, so that's a big difference, but this sounds complex. How do we keep sharing simple? How do we get it back down to that? I just want to share something with a single click or 2 clicks. I know we're doing a lot of things to the UI on web to make that easier to see who has it, quickly remove people. So what are we doing to keep sharing simple?
So simple is, there are 2 ways of measuring simple. One way of measuring simple is by saying we just can't do very much. And that model doesn't fly.
No, that's
People
a
didn't
crappy
need to
model.
do much, they can just go send attachments.
Yeah.
And so simple is about when a user has something that they want to do, they know how to get it accomplished, and they can do it with minimal fuss.
Right.
That includes a user who wants to share content, that includes a recipient who wants to get to a link, and that includes an IT admin who wants to set up their system.
Right.
We focus on very common scenarios like I want to send a link to a customer and I just want it to work. I want to send something that can't be forwarded around, it's the pointer to a file or folder, and I have an external person that I want to work with as part of my team.
Right.
So those three scenarios right there, we've got great solutions. You want to send a link that can be forwarded around, type an email address, hit send, you're done.
Right.
If you want to send a link to a particular person,
And you can just click get link, drop it right into an email, and it holds those same rights as permissions as you just picked.
Unless your IT admin has made changes to the default settings,
Right.
if you get OneDrive out of the box, you select something, you say copy link, the link's going to work for everyone.
Right.
You type an email address, it's going to work for everyone. They don't have to type anything, they don't have to do anything to open it.
And this is what people don't realize is that our Office 365 policies are really around any way that you can share externally, which is Exchange, which is SharePoint, and it's OneDrive. So if you take that link and put it into Exchange and you add 3 people, it is exactly the same thing as you being in the share dialog box and typing in those same 3 people. It's all authenticated through the same mechanism.
Yes, the great thing and the reason why we focused a lot around links is that people can, what we see is that most people who share copy a link to the clipboard, and we don't know where that link's going to go.
Right.
So we've made sure that the link itself is a thing that contains all of the security around it, and our products like Outlook are aware of these OneDrive and SharePoint links and provide additional functionality on top of it.
Right. Let's talk about ubiquity. It's
All
been a big word that we've been tossing around. I sit in engineering meetings with you folks, and as we sat down last year after Ignite and I came on the team, one of the things that I called out is our sharing experience is disparate as we get to different platforms. When we look at Mac, when we look at web, when we look at PC, even different versions, and ubiquity has really been one of those goals. And walk through now, because now we've even extended it to Office, that same look and feel, no matter where you're at, should come through. And that's been quite a journey, and I know one that your team has been deep in.
It has been. It's actually been a really interesting thing where it's a rare case when we find something that is a benefit for end users, it's a benefit for IT admin, and it's a benefit for us internally at Microsoft. We are in this situation where we had more and more people putting things in the cloud, putting them into OneDrive and putting them into SharePoint, and they'd go collaborate with each other, and they would say, you know what, this is the same file.
Right.
Why do I do different things in different places?
And why does it look different?
And we realized that we had put all of this focus on quality of UI and consistency within a given product, within Word on the desktop, within Mac, we wanted things to feel right. And what we realized was that in terms of where the evolution was happening, it was actually in the cloud service that we were adding new capabilities, and customers were saying, I don't want to have to go deploy new clients just to get those new capabilities, so we've built a system that allows us to have cloud-delivered UI that can be populated into any client. So now, whether you're a web user, a PC user, a Mac user, if you're using the desktop, if you're using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, if you're using OneDrive or SharePoint, you've got the same experience so that you get all of the capabilities you need. And of course, we have the ability to tailor that experience to individual apps and individual platforms to find the right balance. And with this new thing, it's less engineering work for us to do, and it gives us very rich telemetry so that we can understand how do the changes we make impact usage on a very micro scale so that we can help employees.
But how do we make sure that's intuitive to the end user? What do we do as a company? What does your team as engineers do to make sure what we may think is simple and smooth and easy, when we take a look at other products or things, you go, wait a minute, maybe that isn't so good. So how do you keep that balance? How do you get that reality check?
We've actually done a lot of really exciting things here. When we started out in this process, we said the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have a set of designs that we feel are an improvement over what we had. But we can't just sit back and say we've agreed with ourselves. So we've actually sat down with usability, with a user research team. We've run usability studies. We actually ran what we call a rapid iteration test and evaluation study, where we went through 27 different variations on our UI. As we went through different users, we watched them, we talked to them, and we looked at how we use it so that we could identify all of these esoteric problems and misunderstandings. And then we also have run a lot of experiments, even in production, from OneDrive Consumer as well as on OneDrive for Business, where we would try small variations and look at the changes, and it was amazing to see sometimes the kinds of differences that small changes would make, so that as we went on, we wanted to make sure that every time we put something out there, success rates went up, collaboration went up, and error rates went down. And so
Excellent.
over time, we're going to keep on investing that way. This model of continuous improvement is actually really exciting for the team, and it allows us to react to customer feedback much more rapidly. In fact, in the days leading up to Ignite, we've already made dozens of changes, very small changes, some of them in very esoteric scenarios, in the sharing UI based on real customer feedback and telemetry to optimize that experience on every endpoint.
And user voice is a key piece. That's one of the things that's going to bring the functionality a little bit later on the shared by me, which customers have been asking for, which will make it easier to sort and see what I've shared, who I've shared with, and then very easily click a button, see who has it, nope, you no longer have access, and then remove that.
We would have loved to have shared by me to show here at Ignite. We're very close. It wasn't a state that we felt comfortable showing it. It is something that is going to be coming soon, and we're working on it, but we don't have a time frame yet that we can commit to.
Fair enough. But I know, and I'm busting your chops a little bit, but I know it's something that is really critical, hot user voice, we're going to do, but we want to make sure we're doing it right. It's easy, and it's intuitive, and it's what people want to do.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's say you run into somebody that's not using OneDrive. They're still using shared drives or one of our competitors. What do you say to that person? Why should they use OneDrive?
Oh, that's really great question. And as we've been here, it's been great to see the kind of responses we've gotten. We've got a lot of people who are like, I haven't looked at OneDrive in a couple years, and I don't understand why we're not using it.
Right.
So there's a couple of really great reasons to use it. I mean, number one, OneDrive is the only cloud storage product out there that deeply integrates with Windows. Files on demand is amazing. Our new share integration with Windows is amazing. We've got some new stuff coming up with the Windows
search
Store
right from
soon.
The desktop, the file viewers, right there in the product, which none of our competitors have. Yeah,
We're also the only cloud solution that integrates with Office 365 and integrates with the Office desktop apps for real-time co-auth. And so as you saw, you can share from the Office desktop on PC and on Mac coming later this year, so that you get all of the capabilities of OneDrive and SharePoint in the world's most popular document editing apps. OneDrive provides you with enterprise-grade security. I mean, I think a lot of people who aren't really close to the product don't realize that OneDrive and SharePoint are actually built on the same technology.
Right.
All of those rich capabilities you've got in SharePoint, the kinds of things that customers from governments to security organizations rely on, are all part of OneDrive as well. We've made it easier to use, but that doesn't mean that it's a toy. It's actually real enterprise class security, which has made this such a big challenge.
Yeah, because we're encrypted at rest, we're encrypted in motion, we meet all of the different levels of certifications.
Oh yeah, the whole alphabet soup.
Government, DOJ using our stuff, absolutely. And number three? You said there were three.
And number three is OneDrive provides you with the ability to integrate across all of your Office apps. It's not just about files and folders. I mean, when was the last time you worked with somebody and said, hey, let's work together, here's a document, let's edit it randomly. People talk, people have meetings, people have chat back and forth, and so OneDrive integrates as part of the Office 365 suite, so that as part of Office 365 groups, you and your team have not only a place to store all of your files, but you have a team website where you can do communications and you can do workflows. You have a team email address, so you can send email if that's the way you talk, and you've got a team chat workspace so that you can work in Microsoft Teams and chat, and you can bring in Planner, Visual Studio, other places where you need it. All of that comes together. All you have to do is establish a set of people in Office 365 and say, we are a project group, we're a work group, we work together, and Office brings all of these world-class tools to you, including OneDrive and SharePoint.
Awesome. Eugene, thanks so much. Great job.
Thanks, Stephen.